I'm going to the beach house with my ex, and you have no right to stop me, my wife told me. Then she posted a photo of him shirtless, standing next to bed. So I invited his family to watch me turn their romantic getaway into a nightmare. My wife said without hesitation, without a hint of guilt, she said, I'm just going to the beach house with Nate. As if Nate were a golden retriever and not the guy I saw her practically undress with her eyes 3 barbecues ago. I put my coffee down on the table without making a sound. The spreadsheet on my laptop was still glowing. Projected income, fixed expenses, fourth quarter goals. Small, neat, perfectly aligned numbers. Unlike my life. If you go to our beach house with him, I said, still looking at the screen, we're done. She snorted with disdain, loud enough to cover the silence that followed. You don't mean that. It's just in sand. There was the line in the sand and the first heel crushing it. She didn't look at me as she left. She just grabbed the keys from the bowl, as always, texting someone, probably Nate, and closed the door as if it were any other Saturday. What she didn't know was that I already knew about Nate, about their little escape plan, about the project she was supposedly working on with a team from Baltimore, the one she had talked about exactly 0 times before it required a full weekend trip with a married man. And not just any man, one I had shaken hands with, bought ribs for, washed loose to me at cornhole as if it meant something. I didn't scream, I didn't chase her, I didn't even blink. But I did close the laptop and I did open the top drawer of the sideboard, the one she never used. Inside was a USB drive, a manila envelope, and a copy of a very old and very boring-looking deed. The kind of thing most people would ignore. She had. I didn't call anyone. I simply opened the calendar app on her iPad, which she hadn't bothered to log out of. There it was. Weekend getaway in Sozor. The same weekend she said I should take some time for myself, relax, maybe go see your brother. Instead, I did what any responsible man would do upon seeing a tornado warning and hearing his wife say, it's probably just a breeze. I packed a bag. Not much, just enough for 3 days and a perfectly timed nuclear reset. Because if she was going to choose a side, I was going to make sure she knew exactly which side she was landing on. You know, more than 90% of people who hear stories like this never subscribe. And hey, if you've made it this far, well, you're the type who likes to watch explosions in slow motion, detonating in broad daylight. Hit that subscribe button. It motivates our team to keep telling these stories as they deserve to be told. Anyway, the guest list was already in motion. Invitations. Not exactly, but I had had a few discreet conversations over the past week. The kind that end with just come on over, bring the kids. I'll have the grill going. Nate's wife was one of them. His kids, the same ones he used to post about during Family Fridays. Even his in-laws, the ones who bought them their first car and helped cover daycare for 2 years. Yes, them too. I knew the ocean wouldn't be the loudest thing that weekend. Not by a long shot. She thought betrayal was silent, that it could be hidden behind beach selfies and cryptic captions. But the thing about secrets is that they rot when you put them in a warm place, like a sunny porch or a beachfront deck. And she walked right into it, confident, smiling, wearing the summer dress I bought her last year with our joint card. She crossed the line. I just made sure there were witnesses. The picture arrived at 6:08 p.m. Her toes half buried in the sand, that expensive Sauvignon Blanc in her hand, the stem of the glass tilted just enough to show off her manicure, the sunset filtering through the window behind her, and in that reflection, a shirtless Nate smiling holding a second glass. She didn't caption it. She didn't need to. The message was clear. I did it. I went. What are you going to do about it? I didn't reply. It wasn't necessary because the wine she was smugly sipping I had delivered. She had forgotten that I managed the corporate account for the liquor supplier, bulk orders for company retreats, and client cocktail parties. I added a case of her favorite to our last shipment and labeled it with surprise beach delivery. Use guest name at the door. She thought she was clever for finding it in the closet. She thought fate was smiling on her affair. She thought. What she didn't realize was that her fate had been scheduled 2 days earlier. When she left her laptop open while printing retreat documents in the home office, I noticed the calendar notification flicker for half a second. SS Beach Friday to Sunday. That was all I needed. I didn't even need her password. She used the same one for everything too. Our daughter's birth year and the name of her old cat. I got it on the first try. There it was. A shared album with Nate full of ideas for the trip. A playlist, a shopping list, charcoal, lemons, herbed goat cheese, hidden condoms. Very subtle, Nate. So I added a few names to the mix. Not in the album, of course, but in the real world. I made calls, one to Nate's wife, who answered on the second ring and listened for 7 minutes without saying a word. Another to his parents. His mother said, "Well, we've always wondered. We'll be there." I also called the property manager. I asked her to make sure everything was stocked for the guests. Family arriving Friday afternoon. Special dinner planned. She adores me. She's the one who helped us find the place 15 years ago when it was falling apart and smelled like fish guts. She even called me sweetie when I offered to double her weekend fee. She had the sheets cleaned, the grill scrubbed, and in this part was critical, the guest book dusted off and left open on the kitchen counter. I also added one more detail, something small. I replaced the framed photo in the hallway, the one from our wedding day, and swapped it with a printout of the signature page from our prenuptial agreement, enlarged just enough to highlight the section infidelity clause resulting in the reallocation of property activated by breach of occupancy by guests. She never read the fine print. No one ever does. But she would. Oh, she would. Back at the beach, she probably poured herself another glass and put her phone screen down, pleased with herself. Maybe she thought I was in a downward spiral pacing, wondering what she was doing, waiting to forgive her when she came back on Monday. She built that version of me in her head. A quiet, predictable man, too logical for retaliation. Someone who processes betrayal like a software update, except logic has its own sharp edges. I wasn't alone. I was arranging a reunion she hadn't planned. They were already halfway down the coast. Her wine wasn't the only thing arriving that night. She just didn't know it yet. At 6:42 p.m. sharp, just as she was arranging a smug charcuterie board that she had arranged to look natural but posted twice on her story, the gravel crunched in the driveway. She knew it was a delivery. Maybe the clean towels she requested through the app, maybe more of that wine she thought had magically appeared. She was already half a bottle in. Nate was still outside with his shirt unbuttoned, as if he were auditioning for a resort catalog. But when she opened the door, it wasn't a delivery driver standing there. It was a woman in her 40s with a pressed navy blue blouse and jeans too clean for a road trip. Beside her, 2 children, one with a backpack slung over his shoulder, the other holding a folded towel, as if he had been told to behave or there would be consequences. Behind them, an older couple stood silently, their hands clasped as if attending a polite funeral. "Hello," the woman said in a calm, serene voice, but a little too rehearsed. "Is this the Winston property?" She blinked. "No, I mean, this is my house." The woman smiled sadly. "Oh," she looked at the children. "Well, not for much longer, I suppose." Before she could launch whatever half-formed defense was brewing in her mind, Nate walked in through the sliding doors behind her, drying his hands on a dish towel, clearly expecting a package or a neighbor. He froze, rooted to the spot. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like someone had unplugged him. "That is," he croaked. "That's my wife." The silence that followed could have flattened a wave. The children didn't move. The older couple didn't even blink. The woman, Nate's wife, simply raised her eyebrows. Not much. Not theatrically, just enough to say seriously. She walked in without waiting for an invitation. "I suppose we'll stay in the guest house," she asked, turning her head slightly toward the backyard. "The grill is already on." Nate sputtered something useless. She didn't even look at him. "I wasn't expecting company," she finally managed to say, her eyes darting from one face to another as if looking for someone to lie to. "This isn't really a prepared for guests." "Oh, don't worry," Nate's wife said. "We're not picky." The older couple nodded in unison. The woman said nothing, but the man offered a quiet. "We brought sheets." Then the sound came. Another car. A sedan rolling down the driveway. She stepped out onto the porch, her heart racing. A black sedan was now parked behind the SV. The driver's door opened. It was her husband, in a clean polo shirt and loafers without socks. A duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He waved at the kids as he passed. She didn't say his name. She couldn't. Her throat was closed. He walked in and looked around as if inspecting a rental property. "Good evening," he said to the room, and then he looked at her. "I didn't realize we had so many people." Nate's wife gave him a slight nod. "Thanks again for inviting us." He turned back to her, his own wife. "I hope you don't mind. I thought since everyone was already on their way here, it would be rude not to coordinate." She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. The children sat on the edge of the couch without being told. Nate's parents went straight to the kitchen as if they remembered the layout. Her husband left his bag neatly in the hallway and returned to the living room. Then, the worst part, he sat right in the armchair by the fireplace, the one she always called her reading nook, and just looked at her. Not with anger, not with smugness, he was just there. And suddenly, it wasn't her house anymore. It was a stage, and all the seats had been filled before the curtain went up. She grabbed Nate by the wrist as soon as she found a sliver of privacy, pulling him past the wine rack into the narrow hallway that led to the laundry room. Her voice was barely a whisper, but every syllable was acid. "What the hell is going on, Nate? You told me they weren't suspicious. You told me your wife didn't know, that she didn't even suspect anything. I didn't know they were coming," he whispered, his eyes darting over her shoulder like a child who has broken a vase and hopes the sound won't reach the next room. "I swear I didn't invite them. I haven't spoken to my parents in weeks." "What a comfort," she hissed. "So what? They just showed up, all of them. The same weekend you bring me here." She looked like she was going to cry. "I don't know. Maybe someone said something. Maybe your husband." Before he could finish, a voice came from the patio. Low, calm, deliberate. "Dinner is at 7. Her husband was standing outside the sliding doors, holding a tray of raw salmon, seasoned and neatly wrapped in foil. He wasn't looking at her. He was adjusting the grill. "I thought we'd all have dinner together," he said, "since this is a family affair." Then he turned back to the deck as if nothing was wrong, as if this were a warm gathering and not a social autopsy with the corpse still twitching on the table. She stood frozen in the hallway with Nate beside her, visibly wilting. Neither of them said a word. They both knew what came next. Dinner. A word neither of them had planned for. An event they did not intend, a moment they were not prepared for. But now it was happening. They walked out together, barely. She felt her legs moving under someone else's command. Her stomach churned as the smells of grilled fish and toasted bread reached her nostrils. The table was set, the plates served, the wine glasses filled. Her husband had even lit the candles, the ones she saved for special nights. Nate's wife was already seated, one child beside her, the other across the table. His parents were in deep conversation with her husband, something about how nice the drive had been. They were all smiling too politely, as if they were at the wake of a relative no one liked. She sat down. There was no other choice. To leave now would mean one thing: guilt. And not the quiet, deniable kind, the screaming kind. If they skipped dinner, they would have to explain why. Why her face had turned pale when the SV arrived. Why Nate couldn't look his wife in the eye. Why her husband, her supposedly oblivious husband, seemed to be the only person not faking it. So she sat. Nate sat beside her across from his own wife, across from the children who said not a word but kept looking at both of them like a slow-burn horror movie. The first course was salad, arugula, candied pecans, balsamic vinaigrette. Her recipe. Her husband served it with surgical precision, like a maitre d' at a 5-star restaurant she would never want to eat at again. No one spoke at first. The clinking of forks and knives was deafening. Then, Nate's mother broke the silence. "So how long have you two been together?" Her fork stopped in midair. Nate's wife didn't flinch, just kept chewing. Nate coughed. "I'm sorry." His father chuckled. "Son, your mother asked you a question." The table fell silent again. Even the children stopped eating. From the other end, her husband refilled his wine as if it were just another evening. She glanced at him. He was smiling faintly. A polite, distant smile of the kind you give to strangers who stand too close in elevators. The worst part, no one left. Because to leave would be to admit to the texts, the weekends, the excuses, the beach playlist labeled third quarter planning. Instead, they ate together, like one big broken family. The grilled salmon flaked perfectly, medium rare, skin crispy. The kind of meal people post with tags like Coast Life and Blessed. Nate's wife complimented the seasoning. "Lemon and dill," she asked casually, dabbing the corners of her mouth with the cloth napkin her husband had ironed that morning. "Very fresh." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat was too tight. She just nodded, trying to chew without choking. The wine sat heavy in her stomach. Her husband poured another round. Not fast, not slow, mechanical. Then the question came, uttered so softly, it almost sounded like he was asking about the weather. "How long has this been going on?" The clink of a fork against porcelain. Nate looked down at his plate, pretending to inspect the parsley garnish. Silence. The children were frozen. Across from her, Nate's wife kept an even tone. "I'm not angry. I'm just curious. Finally, he looked up. It's not what it looks like. The mother-in-law tilted her head. Oh, so it's not an affair. He swallowed. It's complicated. That was the wrong answer. The mother-in-law turned to her. Was this the first time, dear? She almost dropped her glass. I don't think this is. We're not judging, the older woman said gently. We've all made mistakes, but I'm asking because the first time is usually the most honest. Before the alibis start piling up, the air shifted from judgment to autopsy. She tried to breathe. The room felt smaller, the lights too warm. Nate tried to deflect. We didn't plan this. Her husband cleared his throat slightly, not to speak, but as if to remind them he was still there, still listening. Nate's wife leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. I found a receipt in your wallet from February. 2 rooms. Palm in. You told me it was for a conference. He blinked. It was. I had to extend the stay. The weather was bad. Her voice didn't rise. You called me from the hallway. I remember the echo. You never used speakerphone before. That night you did. The children kept their eyes on their plates, as if this were just an adult conversation, but they weren't too young to understand. Children always know when the truth has been uncorked. Her own husband hadn't said a word since dinner began. He just ate, occasionally looking at his watch and refilling glasses like a perfect host. And every time she looked at him, he was already looking at her. Not with anger, not with pain, with stillness. The kind of stillness that makes a person reconsider every decision that brought them there. How long? Nate's wife asked again, her eyes never leaving his. She couldn't answer. Nate tried. It's not like we were keeping track. So it wasn't the first time, his mother cut in. He looked to his father for help. The old man just kept chewing silently. Disappointed. The mother-in-law picked up her napkin and placed it gently on her lap. I suppose what hurts the most, she said, is the coordination, the effort. It takes work to deceive so many people. She looked across the table directly at her. Was it worth it at any point? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out, and across from her, her husband finally put down his fork. Still wordless, just the faintest arch of one eyebrow. The room didn't need yelling. It didn't need threats, because every person at that table had become a mirror, and her reflection was no longer human. It was statistics, it was patterns, it was receipts and calendar events and wine labels and hotel echoes. It was a real-time audit, and she was the discrepancy. The hallway smelled of lemonwood polish and linen spray, the scent she always insisted on to create a calming atmosphere. She had half a glass of wine left in her hand, and the stem clinked softly as she turned the corner. Bare feet brushing against the rug she bought on a self-care weekend in Santa Barbara. She reached for the master bedroom door out of habit, as if that place were still hers. But the doorknob again. Nothing. Then she saw it. A piece of printer paper taped neatly to the door, centered. No handwriting, just a 14-point font. Guests of this room, please use the guest house. At first she laughed softly, stunned, like someone misinterpreting a joke. Then she reached out to peel it off with trembling fingers. It didn't budge. Scotch tape on all 4 corners, sealed tight. She knocked once, twice. No answer. Of course not. She wasn't even sure who was behind the door, and she wasn't ready to find out. The hallway behind her creaked. She turned the wine sloshing slightly in the glass. Nate stood there with his arms crossed, shirtless, barefoot, pathetic. Did she lock it? He asked quietly, trying to keep his voice down. I haven't even packed. She stared at him. He repeated, pointing at the door. She locked it. Right. He looked at the glass in her hand. Then back at him. It's not locked for her, she said. It's locked against us. He looked like he was going to cry. Where should I? The couch. But you're. She turned and walked away before he could say anything else. The guest room was smaller than she remembered. The same bed, the same mismatched nightstands, which she had always said they would replace, and never did. The ceiling fan wobbled slightly, the light hummed dimly. The air smelled stale, as if she wasn't supposed to be there. There was no toothbrush, no slippers, no bathrobe. She didn't bother changing, just lay down on the bed, stiff in her summer dress, her eyes open in the dark, straining to hear anything through the wall. And finally she did. The soft creak of springs, Nate settling onto the couch, then the whisper. I'm sorry, he mumbled through the wall. I didn't know it would be like this. She didn't answer because she did know. She always knew this would end somewhere dark. She just thought it would be on her own terms. Instead, she was in exile in her own home, sleeping in a room she hadn't set foot in for years, while her husband, her quiet, unassuming, Excel spreadsheet-loving husband, was calmly hosting, delegating rooms like a concierge at a boutique hotel, and somehow, despite it all, he was the one in the master suite. The door didn't need a lock. The sign had already said it all. Guests in this room. Not adulterers, not liars, guests. She blinked at the ceiling, barely breathing. Outside, the ocean hit the shore. In here, not even Nate's apologies could soften the silence. She finally closed her eyes and felt the house, which was once hers, reject her board by board. The fire crackled steadily, sending small sparks into the humid night air. A lazy breeze drifted in from the water, carrying salt, smoke, and something sour underneath. Resentment, maybe. The logs were arranged perfectly. Her husband had done it himself earlier in the evening, like everything else. As if building the fire were therapeutic, as if lighting a flame under a circle of liars wasn't symbolic enough. They had all found a seat without being asked. Nate sat stiffly in a wicker chair he once claimed was too soft. His father leaned against the deck railing sipping tea. The children were upstairs, finally asleep or pretending to be. The rest of them were exactly where her husband wanted them, positioned, present, uncomfortable. She sat huddled in an Adirondack chair wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember packing, her legs drawn up, a second glass of wine in her hand. She hadn't eaten dinner. No one asked why. It was Nate's wife who broke the silence. She spoke into her glass, not looking at anyone. Every Sunday at 10:02 p.m. for almost a year, no one moved. He always said it was work. A client in Chicago, urgent revisions, something about time zones. She smiled. Not kindly, not even bitterly, just empty. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He was typing, pacing, headphones on, very stressed. She looked across the fire at Nate, who was staring into the flames as if they owed him an explanation. Do you remember that, Nate? She asked. The calls you'd take with the balcony door cracked open, pretending the wind was too loud. Nate said nothing. The flames hissed. Her husband, still silent by the fire, picked up a marshmallow skewer and twirled it idly in the air as if calculating wind speed. Then, softly, he said, that was when she always took a shower. Every Sunday, 10:02 her breath caught. She didn't know why he had chosen that moment to speak. Maybe he had been waiting, measuring, letting the fire burn just long enough before adding fuel. He didn't look at her when he said it. He didn't say her name. He just stated it like a timestamp, like a piece of data. Nate turned to her. That's a coincidence. Her husband looked up. Is it? She stared back. Her husband, the man she once called boring because he never liked surprises. Never missed a calendar invite. Never missed a utility bill. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even hurt. He was observing. She realized for the first time that she hadn't just underestimated him. She had never really known him at all. Nate's wife leaned forward. I used to wonder why he got a little giddy on Sunday nights, like he was looking forward to something. Remember that little hum you used to do, Nate? Like you were proud of yourself. Nate's father laughed dryly. Yeah, he used to do that before sneaking into the liquor cabinet as a teenager too. No one laughed. No one yelled. No one needed to because no one denied it. Her mouth opened, closed, nothing came out. The cold air from the water cut through the blanket. The heat from the fire didn't reach her. Across from her, her husband tossed a dry twig into the flames. It sparked like a match against dry wood. I guess we all have patterns, he said. Some people build them, others hide inside them. Another silence, but this one didn't linger. It settled. And this time, no one asked questions. They already had all the answers. They had just been comparing notes quietly, carefully. And now every alibi, every excuse, every you're just being paranoid, vanished under the weight of two firelit gazes. She thought she could navigate the lies in the dark, but here, under the fire's glow, there was nowhere left to hide. She woke to the sound of zippers. Not alarms, not conversations, just the steady, practical whisper of packing, polyester against cotton, the soft thud of shoes wrapped in newspaper. She didn't even need to open the door to know what it was. They were leaving. Nate's parents had the discipline of people who never need to explain themselves. They moved through the hallway like ghosts, avoiding the kitchen, skipping breakfast, not even bothering to make a second pot of coffee. The house suddenly felt smaller, as if their departure was sucking the air out of every room. She peeked through the crack in the guest room door. They didn't see her, Or maybe they did and just didn't acknowledge it. His father rolled a modest black suitcase down the hall. His mother carried a floral tote bag full of board games and crossword puzzles. He hadn't played any of them. No goodbyes, no speeches, not even a parting glance at Nate, who stood by the window pretending to check the weather. They didn't say his name, they didn't say hers. The front door closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, they were gone. An hour later, she heard the garage door open. Nate's wife moved deliberately, each item packed with care, no chaos, no tears. The children climbed into the back seat. One carried a stuffed animal under one arm. The other had headphones on and a faraway look that didn't belong on a child that young. She walked them to the car, her arms crossed tightly against the morning chill, but she didn't dare speak. Nate stood beside her, helpless, trying to force meaning into a farewell that wouldn't come. "Natalie, we can." He started reaching out a hand. She took a step back, not dramatically, not harshly, just enough. The kind of retreat that says, "We've already tried." She finished buckling the second seatbelt, closed the door carefully, and walked around the car to the driver's side. She didn't look at Nate. She looked at her husband. He was on the front step holding a mug of black coffee, not waving, not smiling, just present. She met his gaze. "Thank you," she said, "for letting them see." He nodded once, not in approval, but in acknowledgement. Then she got in the SV and drove away. The sound of tires crunching on gravel faded into the sea wind. Inside, the silence thickened. Nate hadn't moved. She could see the faint tremor in his jaw, the twitch in his fingers, as if he wanted to punch a wall, but knew better than to leave a mark on someone else's house. "I didn't think she'd actually," he started. "Nobody cares what you thought," she said. He looked at her with wide eyes, a flash of betrayal. But she wasn't playing his game anymore, not playing anyone's. Because in that moment she understood. This wasn't just about Nate or her husband, or even the affair. It was about witnesses. She hadn't just betrayed a marriage. She had tried to rewrite history in secret, and someone else had read it aloud for everyone. And now the characters were walking off stage one by one. Nate had lost his family, but her loss, hers, was quieter, slower, more surgical. She watched her husband go back inside, closing the front door behind him as if sealing a tomb. He didn't say a word, he didn't need to. She was still standing there, and she was already gone. She found him on the back deck that afternoon, just after the last light had faded from the horizon. The fire pit was out, the grill scrubbed, the chairs collected. Her husband sat with a glass of water in his hand. No wine, no music, no need for distraction. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say for hours. Between emptying the dishwasher, folding a stranger's towel she found on the railing, and staring at the guest book still open on the counter with all their names logged in neat script. She tried a dozen different openings. None of them worked. So when she walked out and stood in the doorway, she said the only thing left. It wasn't supposed to be real. He didn't look up right away, just nodded once slowly. "I thought you would just," she continued, her voice cracking, "get angry, maybe yell, maybe leave for a few days, and then come home." He turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. "You were right about one thing," he said. "I used to chase you." She felt her legs give way, but she didn't sit down. She couldn't. That chair across from him wasn't hers anymore. "It's not last night, can we fix this?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Silence. Then he leaned forward and placed his glass on the deck railing with precision. The sound it made, a soft clink of glass on smooth wood, was somehow louder than any argument they had ever had. "You went to the house," he said. "So I left it for you." She blinked. "What?" "The trust transfer is done," he continued. "I filed it the morning you left. The deed is in your name now. The land, the property, the utilities are on autopay for the next 6 months. You won't notice the change. It's all clean. It's all legal." She shook her head, not following. "You're giving it to me?" "I'm giving it back to you," he corrected. "You made your choice, so I made mine." She moved closer. "So you're leaving?" He looked at her then fully. Calm, steady, devastating. "No," he said. "You are." Her mouth opened, closed. "What?" "I'll stay here," he said simply, in peace. She laughed, a brittle, panicked sound. "You can't just kick me out. This is my house." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" She took a step forward, suddenly desperate to regain some ground. "You can't be serious. You can't just stay and throw me out. Do you think you'll feel fine alone in a house full of what? Memories. Burnt trust." He smiled. not cruelly, but like someone watching a predictable movie they've already seen 4 times. I won't be alone, he said. Not for long. She felt the ground open up beneath her feet. Are you seeing someone? No. Then what? I'm seeing, he said. That's the difference. She stood there, barefoot on the deck, the wind tangling her hair, her heart beating against her bones like a warning bell. For 19 years, she built a version of him in her mind. Predictable, passive, convenient. A man who would forgive because forgiveness was easier than confrontation. She never imagined he would leave without moving an inch. You're really going to stay here? She asked. After all this, he looked out at the ocean. The tide was out. This house was supposed to be our sanctuary, he said. But you made it your secret. She didn't answer. You want it, he added. Take it. Put your name on the mailbox. Paint the walls. Live here if you can, but don't ask me to carry what you broke. Her hands were shaking. He stood up, picked up his glass, and walked past her gently. No pushing, no dramatic exits, just a man who had stopped chasing ghosts. She turned to follow him, but the screen door swung shut behind him with a click. He didn't lock it, but he didn't need to because in that moment she knew she wasn't in the house anymore. She was in it, and he had already moved back in. She saw them from the upstairs window. 2 figures standing by the shore, one in a navy blue windbreaker, the other in a tan blazer with a clipboard. The sign was still folded under the realtor's arm, but she knew what it was before he even planted it in the sand. The same sign she had seen in front of other people's endings. She ran out the door, barefoot, her heart in her throat, her hair still damp from the shower she had taken to wash away the shame of the night before. The wind was sharper than usual, cold for mid-autumn. Her feet sank into the wet shoreline, the hem of her jeans dragging in the seafoam. He had his back to her, talking calmly to the realtor who was nodding and jotting something down. Open house this weekend, the man was saying. It'll sell fast. This location always does. She called his name before her courage evaporated. You said I could keep it. Her voice broke, half swallowed by the ocean wind. He turned slowly, methodically, not startled, not surprised, as if he had already played this moment out 100 times in his head. I did, he said. His tone was soft, almost gentle. Then with the slightest tilt of his head, you just showed everyone what that meant. The words hung in the air, not as an accusation, but as a conclusion. She wanted to scream, to argue, to make a scene, but there was no audience left. No in-laws, no children, no Nate, just a realtor typing something into his phone, probably scheduling the first showing. She looked back at the house, her house, or what had been. He started walking back toward the steps, hands in his pockets, his eyes on the grain of the wood, as if memorizing each plank for the last time. Or maybe the first. She followed him. Please, she tried again, her voice softer. Now don't do this. But he didn't answer. The door creaked open. He stepped inside and closed it with no slam, no lock, just the faint click of a man who had made his peace with leaving someone behind. She stood on the porch, not knowing what to do with her hands. Her breath fogged in front of her. Then she saw at her suitcase, neatly zipped, clean white wheels, propped up next to the door, as if an Uber was due to arrive any minute. It hadn't been there before. He had packed it himself. She crouched beside it, unzipped it. Inside clothes, her toothbrush, the charger she always forgot, a folded sweater she had stolen from him on their 3rd anniversary trip and never given back. She held it for a moment, clinging to the worn fabric as if it could anchor her, but it couldn't. She looked back at the house. All the lights were off. The silence was intentional. Not a punishment, a closing. She sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The last rays turned the windows into mirrors. She couldn't see inside anymore. Only herself, faint, alone, reflected in a glass she no longer belonged behind. She didn't cry. Tears would have meant there was still something to bargain for. Instead, she reached for the handle of the suitcase and finally pulled.